I had circled the date on the calendar in red ink. June 12th, my grandson's wedding, my firstborn's firstborn. It should have been the happiest day for me since I first held him in that hospital, swaddled in blue. I was there when he took his first step. I was the one who bought him his first baseball mitt. And now he was getting married. Of course, I'd be there. Of course, I'd have a seat in the front row. I picked out my dress 2 months early, a powder blue lace with sleeves that covered the crepey skin on my arms. I paid extra to have it, altered just right, got my nails done, even added a little shimmer to my silver hair. I felt beautiful, nervous, yes, but excited, when I arrived. I walked in holding the little white corsage box they'd said would be waiting for me, but no one came up to greet me. I looked around the venue, a vineyard ballroom, polished wood floors, candles flickering in gold holders. The air buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses, but not one familiar voice called my name. I saw my son Daniel across the room. He caught my eye and smiled briefly, then turned back to a group of his wife's relatives. Not even a wave. I wandered to the sign-in table, thinking maybe someone would guide me to my seat or show me where to get my corsage. A young girl with a clipboard looked confused when I gave her my name. I think your place card is ... maybe in the back, she said, flipping papers nervously. She pointed me through a side hallway. I followed it, my shoes echoing. I passed boxes, a coat rack, and a swinging door. And there, taped to a countertop in the kitchen, there was my name. Handwritten in pen Mrs. Joan Whitaker. There were no flowers, no seat at a table, just a folding chair next to a tray of mini quiches. I stood there for a moment, stunned. I kept expecting someone to jump out and say it was a joke, that my real seat was up front, that the corsage was just misplaced. But no one came. The kitchen staff bustled past me, ignoring me like I was one of them. Then I heard her voice. Melissa, my daughter-in-law. She'll be more comfortable back here, she was saying to someone. Less overwhelming for her. Comfortable. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. I wasn't some frail old lady who needed babysitting. I was the woman who helped raise Daniel while his father worked 12-hour shifts. I was the one who wrote the check for the floral arrangements, the venue deposit, and the damn custom cake with 6 tiers and edible pearls. I sat down in that cold metal chair and watched my family laugh and toast from behind a swinging kitchen door. The music started, string quartet playing, Can't Help Falling in Love. That was the song I danced to at my own wedding. They didn't even think to ask me. I stayed there, quiet, alone, and ashamed. For 2 hours, I served myself crackers and sipped lukewarm tea from a paper cup. No one came back to check on me. Not my son, not my grandson, not anyone. I left before the cake was cut. As I drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The glittering clip in my hair was still in place. My lipstick hadn't even smudged. And yet something in me had broken. They forgot the corsage, but they forgot something bigger too. They forgot who I was, what I'd done, what I was still capable of. And that, I promise you, was a mistake. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people you love most, I want you to hear me. You are not invisible. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated. Comment below if you've been shoved into someone else's kitchen. And don't forget to subscribe because this is just the beginning. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in my bathrobe, a slice of dry toast untouched on my plate. The silence in the house felt like a second betrayal. I used to dream about having my family over every weekend, grandkids running through the hallway, laughter spilling out of every room. But now, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the aching beat of my own heart. I glanced at the yellow folder lying on the counter, the bank folder, the one with the check stubs. I had given them so much, not just my time, not just my love, but real money. $18,000. That's what I wrote for the wedding. Just until we can afford the rest. Mom, Daniel, had said, holding my hand like a little boy again. It would mean everything to us. And I believed him. I always did. I flipped open the folder and stared at the photocopy of the check. My name, in cursive, next to the memo line, wedding gift. I thought of Melissa's smug face, the way she said I'd be more comfortable out of the way. Comfortable. They had taken my money, then stuffed me in the kitchen like leftover potatoes. I gave them filet mignon, and got crumbs. I wasn't crying anymore. I'd done enough of that last night. I was starting to feel something else now, a quiet, rising heat. That afternoon, Daniel called. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice too cheerful. "Thanks again for everything yesterday. It went great, didn't it?" I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch until he asked, "Everything okay?" I finally spoke. "Did you know where they sat me?" He hesitated. "Well, I think Melissa thought the reception might be a lot for you. She wanted to give you space. It was her idea, but she meant well." Space. I almost laughed. "I paid for that space," I said, "and the flowers, and the venue, and the cake, but apparently not enough to get a seat at the table." "Mom, please don't be like that." "I'm not being like anything, Daniel. I'm just realizing who I am in your life." There was another long pause, and when he finally spoke, it sounded like guilt. "I'll talk to Melissa. Maybe we can do something nice for you. A brunch. Just us, a brunch." My fingers curled around the edge of the table. I didn't want a pity brunch. I didn't want their crumbs anymore. I wanted my dignity. "You don't need to worry," I said, my voice calm and cold. "I'm updating my accounts this week, redirecting some of the trust funds. I think it's time I reassess who's actually part of my family." Daniel started to speak again, but I had already hung up. I looked back down at that yellow bank folder and tapped the pen against it slowly. They forgot. I built this family. Now I was ready to remind them. I spent the next few days visiting the bank, speaking to my lawyer, and reviewing every document I'd once signed with trust and love. It was like peeling away layers of blindness I didn't know I had. I had set up a college fund for my grandson, one that Melissa knew about. I'd added Daniel and her as joint trustees when they promised to care for me in my older years. Saw now how cleverly they'd weaved their needs into my kindness. I sat across from Mr. Riley, my lawyer for over 20 years, and told him exactly what I wanted. "You sure about this, Joan?" he asked, peering over his glasses. "I've never been more sure," I said, steady. "I want them removed from everything. Every clause, every fund, every fallback." He nodded, slowly. "We can convert the remainder into a charitable trust, or reassign it." I smiled. "I've got a few names in mind. People who know what love is without price tags." That night, I started writing letters. Not angry ones. Not bitter. Just honest. One went to my church, another to my niece, a single mom in Iowa who had once sent me homemade cookies when I had the flu. I included checks with each. Real money, but more than that, recognition, gratitude. What I once gave blindly to those who ignored me, I would now give meaningfully to those who had earned it. The next Sunday, I attended church early, sat in my usual pew, third from the front. After service, I saw Lydia, our pastor's wife, at the coffee table. "Joan," she said warmly, "we missed you last week." "I had a family thing," I said with a gentle smile. But it reminded me how important chosen family is. I handed her a folded note. Inside was a check for the new roof the church had been fundraising for. She gasped and hugged me, tears in her eyes. That moment that felt like more family than anything I'd felt at the wedding. I spent the afternoon baking banana bread and dropping off a small basket at my neighbor's porch. Mrs. Evers, who always left flowers on my doorstep after doctor appointments, she opened the door and hugged me like I was her own sister. It was quiet revenge, really, not dramatic, not loud, just deliberate redirection. A gentle cutting of strings. Melissa posted dozens of wedding photos that day on Facebook. Everyone looked happy, except me, because I wasn't in a single picture, not even one. I scrolled through them, studying every smiling face, and for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt invisible and powerful, because the moment they erased me, they gave me freedom. The calls stopped after that. No one checked in. No one asked where I'd been or how I was feeling. It was almost as if, by removing the money, I'd also removed my existence from their lives. Melissa didn't message me. Daniel didn't drop by. Even my grandson, the one I held as a baby and carried on my back when his shoes pinched, didn't text a single thank you. I waited, for days, then weeks. But silence can be louder than any argument. It's heavy. And when it comes from your own blood, it feels like standing outside in a snowstorm with no coat. Every day, I imagined the phone ringing. I imagined Daniel calling to apologize. I imagined my grandson saying, "Grandma, I didn't know." But they didn't. And maybe that was the most painful part. It wasn't just that they forgot me at the wedding, it was that they never looked back. I started cleaning out closets, sorting through old boxes I hadn't touched in years. Photographs, birthday cards, old VHS tapes of Christmas mornings, I held on to one picture for a long time. Daniel, age 12, standing on a dock with a fishing pole. I was next to him, smiling so wide you'd think the world had nothing but joy. Where did that version of us go? I sat there, staring at the image, wondering when things changed. Was it when he got married, or when I became too easy to ignore? The next day, I went to the community center and signed up for a pottery class, something I hadn't done since I was 30. I walked in expecting silence and left laughing over clay-stained hands with 3 women I barely knew. They invited me to lunch afterward. I said yes. I was building something again. Not just with my hands but with my life. That night, as I sat on my porch sipping tea, I looked up at the stars and whispered, "I still matter." And somehow, the silence agreed. It was about a month later when the first crack showed. I was at the grocery store, comparing prices on oatmeal, when I ran into Paula, Melissa's cousin. We'd never been close, but she recognized me right away and smiled awkwardly. "I've been meaning to reach out," she said. "I saw the pictures. I'm sorry about how that all turned out." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then leaned in. "People are talking about how you weren't even in a single wedding photo. A few folks asked if you had passed away. Someone even said you looked like the kitchen help." I froze. My heart didn't break. It clenched. Then she added, almost as a whisper, "Melissa's not exactly winning over Daniel's friends either. She's been, well, let's just say, spending more time at her yoga retreats than at home." She left me with a pit in my stomach but not sorrow. It felt like justice. 2 nights later, I received a message from Daniel, the first in weeks, just 5 words. "Can we talk? It's urgent." I didn't respond. An hour later he called. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Mom," he said, "I know things have been tense, but something's happened." I waited. He sighed. "Melissa's talking about separating. She's said some things I didn't expect. About the money. About you." There it was. "I think she married me for it," he said. "For what she thought she could get from you." I closed my eyes. My chest felt tight, but not because I was hurting for once. I was calm. "She told me she only put you in the kitchen because you were off-brand," he added bitterly, "that you didn't fit the look of the wedding. Off-brand that did it." "I'm sorry, Daniel," I said softly, "but if it takes losing your wife to finally remember your mother, then maybe the wrong one." Walked out. He went quiet, and in that silence, I could feel it again, that power, that shift. Because for the first time, he was the one left out in the cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering the day I first made my will. Daniel was 30. His marriage was still new. I added Melissa because he asked me to. "She's family now, Mom. Treat her like one of your own." And I did. I treated her like a daughter. I baked her favorite apple pie every Thanksgiving. I watched their dog when they vacationed in Hawaii. I gave them down payments and birthday checks, and covered the hospital bill when their insurance fell through, and they erased me with a seating chart. I got up before the sun rose, brewed a cup of black tea, and sat down at my kitchen table. I pulled out the manila envelope Mr. Riley had mailed back with the new trust forms. With every signature, I felt lighter, not because I was cutting them out, because I was setting myself free. I added a new name to my will that day. Ava. Just she was the teen at the community center who helped me carry my pottery tools to the car last week. Her own grandmother had passed. We'd shared a moment that felt more real than any interaction I'd had with Melissa in 10 years. I also included Mrs. Evers, my neighbor, and Lydia from church. And the rest, well, I left a portion for organizations that helped women like Mifra Cotton, pushed aside, told to stay silent. When I mailed the envelope back to Mr. Riley, I stood at the mailbox for a long time. It wasn't grief I felt, or anger. It was peace, because in choosing who would carry on my legacy, I finally chose me. No more pleasing, no more begging for a seat at a table I built with my own hands. I walked back inside, poured another cup of tea, and whispered, "I am not disposable." And this time, the silence bowed in agreement. It was a Sunday afternoon when Daniel showed up at my door. No call, no text. Just him, standing on my porch like the boy who used to come home after scraping his knees. But this time, he wasn't bleeding on the outside. I opened the door slowly. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't answer. I simply stepped aside. We sat across from each other at the table where I used to serve him pancakes. The silence sat with us for a while. Finally he said, I'm sorry, Mom. He looked up, eyes glassy. I didn't know what Melissa was planning. She didn't show me the seating chart. She just said it would be best if you weren't in the spotlight. She said you wouldn't mind. I stayed quiet. I should have checked. I should have said something when I saw you back there, but I didn't, and I hate myself for it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I found this in Melissa's drawer, he said. It was the corsage, the one meant for you. She never brought it out. Said you wouldn't care. He slid it across the table. I looked at the box but didn't open it. Daniel, I said, do you know the last time you asked me how I was doing? He looked confused. I don't either, I answered for him, because it's been that long. Tears spilled down his cheeks. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I just want to fix things, he said. I stood up slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the small bird feeder I'd hung last winter. A little finch hopped there now, pecking unbothered, weightless. You can't fix what you ignored for years, I said. You can only start over, somewhere new, with a different heart. He sat there, quiet, and then, softly, he said, I still love you, Mom. I turned back to him and nodded. I know, but love without respect is just decoration, and I've had enough of those. A week passed. I didn't hear from Daniel again, and for once, I wasn't waiting. I had started walking in the mornings with Ava from the community center. She was teaching me how to use voice memos on my phone. You've got stories, Miss Joan, she said. People need to hear them. Sometimes, I told her about the past, about raising Daniel alone after his father died, about the factory job I took, the lunches I packed, the nights I stayed up sewing torn uniforms. I poured everything I had into my son, and when he grew up, I poured into his family. But people don't always pour back. Some only take. So I stopped pouring into the ones who left me empty. I started planting again, herbs on the porch, daffodils by the fence, things that would bloom without needing permission. And in that quiet life, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Melissa posted a photo on social media last night. She was alone on a balcony, drink in hand, captioned, sometimes, letting go is peace. The irony didn't escape me. I didn't comment, I didn't react, I didn't need to, because I knew what peace actually looked like, and it wasn't her filtered smile. It was me, sitting in the backyard with dirt under my fingernails and the wind in my hair. It was me, baking banana bread for someone who never expected a thing in return. It was me, no longer explaining my worth to people who only saw my wallet. Daniel would recover. He always had the privilege of doing that. But this time, he'd do it without the cushion of my sacrifice. I cut the funding, but I kept my soul. And when I finally opened that velvet box, the corsage, she said I wouldn't care about. I pressed the little wilted flowers into a book, not to remember the pain, but to remember the promise I made that day. Never again would I sit in someone else's kitchen, waiting to be seen. I built this family, and now I was building myself. Thank you for reading Joan's story. If you've ever been overlooked, erased, or pushed aside by the people you gave everything to, remember, you are not invisible. Comment below if this story spoke to you. Like if you've ever had to choose yourself after betrayal. Subscribe to hear more stories of strength, justice, and emotional power, because you deserve to be heard.